On this week's episode of the Impact Sessions, I'm delighted to have with me Rachel Clark. Rachel is the owner and director of Wrapped PR, and she's here to educate our audience on all things to do with PR. We've entitled the podcast, Why PR Works and How to Make It Work for Your Business. So without further ado, welcome Rachel.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. We met at an event recently, and I really quite liked your direct approach to PR, and you're very clear. And I just thought, you know what, something our audience might be interested in. It's one of those misunderstood areas of business potentially. So I'm going to go through a series of questions. We'll kind of explore a little bit about what that looks like, and hopefully A, you'll enjoy it, and B, the audience will enjoy some of the things that we share with them, if that's okay.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm hoping that we can unclear some myths that surround the PR industry.
I think there are a few, but there's a few with every sector, isn't there, really, to be fair, Rachel? So, you know, it's not it's not unusual in business. People understand what they understand, and then they don't know what they don't know, do they? So,
that's
okay.
so true.
So, first question I always ask a guest is, how the hell did you get into all this sort of PR strategy and delivery? How long's Wrapped PR been going, and what are your ambitions for the business?
Well, that's a great question, Nick. Let's think about that. So I've been doing PR for my whole career, so that's 20 years now. And the way I got into it was an old friend actually thought that I would be quite good at it. I had no idea what it was, no idea how to get into it either, and no relevant experience. So that was a really good start.
Often the best place to start, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. So, however, I did need a job at the time, so I just graduated. I did French and business at university. And I remember getting hold of a contacts book. This was pre-Google. And it was something that The Guardian used to publish. It was all about media contacts and PR contacts. And the way I did it was I found the top 100 PR agencies, and I contacted every single one of them by phone, because that was pretty much pre-email, I think, as well. Or email was quite a new thing. Can
I just, some of our listeners, just to let you know, there was a world before Google and before email, and it was okay, wasn't it?
It was exciting, yeah. It was all about face-to-face and the phone, and it was kind of a little bit less stressful sometimes, but yeah, there was the world before Google, so imagine that. So I vividly remember still now sitting on the doorstep at my friend's house and calling all of these different agencies and telling them a little bit about me and why I wanted to get into PR, even though I wasn't quite sure what that was. And from obviously each phone call, you being in sales, you'll know this, you get more and more information about an industry or about a sector and what different people's problems are and what people are looking for in a new recruit. And I managed to get 4 interviews out of those 100 agencies. And then out of the 4 interviews, I got 2 job offers. So I managed to get into a really nice small consultancy based in Victoria, which actually, looking back, was a really great footing for starting out in PR, because it did business to business and business to consumer clients.
With a small business as well, you're probably getting more involved across a breadth of stuff, because it's not big enough to niche, is it, for example?
So true. And the way we did it was, you took on everything from reception to looking after clients to taking journalists out and writing press releases and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So from there, I worked my way up and got promoted, and then joined a bigger agency which worked on big brands like Marks and Spencer and McDonald's and Microsoft, which is that small company that we've all heard of.
Yeah, they're quite a nice sized client to have, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. So then I got actually headhunted in-house to a role within Red Bull, which is a brand that a few of us have now heard of.
Was that at the outset of Red Bull? Was that in the early days? Because it's quite a strong...
It's an interesting one, because Red Bull's actually... It could be about 25 years old now. So when I joined, I think it had been going for about 12 years. So I joined there as brand and communications manager for about 3 years there, and managed in-house sort of agencies as well, and PR and communications for the new product division within Red Bull.
Okay, so there's a hell of a grounding there then, isn't there?
There was a lot. There was a lot going on.
So Wrapped PR, that's a fairly new venture for you, isn't it? From what I understand. It is,
yeah. So moved up north, back to closer to family, and got married about 12 years ago. And set up Wrapped about 3 years ago after working as PR director for Savills, the estate agency firm and real estate services firm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going well?
Absolutely, yeah. So we joined joined forces with a couple of colleagues who were also doing PR. So the way we work Wrap PR is that we'll put the best team on for the right project.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's a real estate firm or food and drink, retail, we'll kind of collate the best team of freelancers and go from there.
So you provide like a managed service then, as well as the hand-holding direct service then?
Very much so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's not an unusual business model, that, is it really? It gives you the best of both worlds, doesn't it? The skill set without the overhead. And
it really does. And I think having been a client as well within those, multinational companies, you often see as a client that you often get... sometimes you get passed over to more junior members of staff, which is fine. But we really wanted to offer something that was much more director-led and much more strategic. And that way we can offer a lot more value for clients in terms of where they're spending the budget.
Excellent. Okay. Well, let's explore PR, because you mentioned earlier, I wanted to get into it, but I didn't know what it was. And I think I've been in business 20-odd years plus, and it seems to me to be one of the most misunderstood sort of services that a business might engage in. Am I just working with the wrong people, or is that right? Do people still not get what PR is all about?
I think that's a really interesting question. So generally when a client comes to us, they've got some sort of understanding of what PR is. Some people think, PR is HR. I mean, there's a lot of misunderstanding out there.
Really?
Yeah, really. Not a client, obviously, because they've probably got a certain level of education around marketing. But we've had everything, and also some people within businesses, if they're not directly responsible for PR, then they'll think, it just means press release. Well, it actually, PR stands for public relations, so it's all about growing reputation, growing your brand, and protecting and managing that reputation when you've got it. So it's really about targeting your audiences depending on where they are, and going from there.
I think the key to that, though, is people don't understand or don't think about the consequences of managing reputation when things hit the fan as well, do they? So it's more. So a press release doesn't do that, does it? It's about reputation and brand management and all those kind of things.
It's so true, and I think things have changed so massively in the last 10 years, just with digital as well. So it's very much social media can become part of that function as well, and also customer service. So, like you say, if things start hitting the fan on social media, then the PR team needs to be integral to that whole conversation that's happening.
Thing is, it's instant these days as well, isn't it? Before the advent of certainly social media channels, you would probably have a 24-hour window before something was going to hit the news cycle, and you could probably put something in place as a response to that. These days, it's instant, and certainly people like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn to a certain extent. Reputation can be absolutely torn to shreds within seconds with just a poorly crafted piece of content, or something that as a PR professional like yourself would just grind the teeth and think, why has that gone out? Why would you do that kind of thing?
Yeah, sometimes I always say, you can't make it up. What can go wrong? So it's all right doing a plan and a crisis management plan, but sometimes you just cannot make up what life is going to throw at you. So definitely the news cycle is, it's 24/7 now. What used to take, like you say, a newspaper 24 hours to potentially print or even broadcast, to run the story would be a few hours. It's now, within an hour's window. So if your customer service team isn't briefed and, what could be potentially a crisis, and if you're not responding to that crisis really quickly, then you can get into some serious trouble in terms of, your business growth.
That makes it interesting for you though, doesn't it?
Oh, it's always interesting, Nick. I don't think there's ever been a dull moment.
Excellent. Okay. Let's talk about giving some advice and maybe some insights to our sort of audience and listeners. What do you reckon the common challenges or conversations are that you face when you mention PR to a business owner? What are they coming back at you with as either misunderstandings or, those kind of areas? What are the common ones that you come across?
I think when I'm talking to a business owner, it's often, it's either on spec or the owner has actually realised that they need some sort of promotion of their brand, and they're looking at different revenue streams and ways to do that. And PR sometimes comes up in the conversation. So very much I would see my role as an educator. There's so many ways to spend a budget now, and PR might not necessarily be right for that particular business owner. It might be that they're trying to target consumers and they've got a really niche target audience, and it might be that Facebook ads are the better use of their budget. And so that's something that I really enjoy as part of my job, is really being strategic advisor to a client and really helping them through the jungle that is marketing and PR now.
And the budget.
And the budgets, exactly, or the investment, as we like to call it.
Yes. Okay. So what kind of things do they come up with as challenges as to why they might be put off the idea of PR then? Because as I say, it is a misunderstood kind of concept, really. If you're meeting somebody, not someone who's approached you because they've obviously got an idea of what they think they want, but when you meet somebody at a networking event and you say, it's wrapped PR, do you get some eye rolling, or do you get any response from people who just don't get it and what they're pushing back at you?
I don't think the eye roll. I don't think I've ever had that, but often clients are just so confused about what avenue they should take with how to promote their business. They've got so many shiny object syndrome, if you like, so many options. And I think it's just about negotiating those different options for the client. And I would see that as a consultant's job, really, is to help them negotiate that. So yeah, it's pretty, once you start explaining that it's all about third-party endorsement and getting someone else to say how great you are as opposed to you saying it yourself, it's much more powerful. And that's really where you can make game changers for your business. So you can increase sales, get more leads, and promote your business that way, instead of it all being about what you say you are.
Yeah, I mean, everyone can claim to be an expert or specialist or whatever it might be, but there's no better advocacy than someone else saying, I've used your services, I've experienced your product, and it actually does more than what it says on the tin, and it's an absolutely brilliant sort of solution. So that's all part of the mix then, is it? Is in terms of building an advocacy kind of platform?
Very much so. It's all about advocacy. Sometimes I'll liken it to if you were a market trader and you had something to sell, I don't know, let's say jam, because I do some food and drink clients.
Yep.
And what on week one on your Saturday market stall, you put a poster in front of your stall and you say, we're selling the best jams ever, come and buy them. And you'll get so many customers, and that's great. You might get some passers-by because they'll notice your sign. But the next week, you've managed to win an award and you've been talked about in the local paper. And I don't know, a food editor might have said that you're their favourite brand of jam. All of a sudden, you've got a queue around the corner because other people are talking about you.
Right.
And that's the power of PR versus advertising.
Yes, I mean, it's a different part of the mix, isn't it, really? So what, without putting you on the spot, what are the strands form PR? Because it's public relations, so it's advocacy, it's about, you've mentioned, it's about kind of building that sort of platform, press releases, etc. What other things go into the PR mix? Because it's quite broad, isn't it?
It's really broad, and I think because it's changed so much with, the advent of digital communications as well. If a PR person is coming in and they don't understand the rest of the marketing mix, like SEO and content and video, the power of that, I think they're kind of probably underselling themselves. So there's so many things that go into it, although, writing's always a key skill probably that you need, and then obviously managing your clients' expectations. But yeah, it really does go across the whole marketing mix and also across the whole business if it's integrated.
So coming into PR as a career, do you recommend that people have a strong journalistic type background, or is it more of a general business background? What would be the ideal study, maybe at degree level, for example, for someone who would hit the ground running in a PR kind of role?
Yeah, there are a lot of PR degrees actually now.
Okay.
So communications, even I think now, I mean, it's that whole thing that you go back to about education not being quite geared up to the workplace anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's changing so quickly. So anything, if you've got, knowledge of digital, knowledge of content writing, SEO, if you've got a blog, that would be a great start, because you're already going to have half the skills that you're going to need going forward.
Unless that blog's there and nobody's looking at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. So the PR consultant's role is to convert the content into, I guess, activity, action, readership, downloads, engagement type thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's all about what the client's objectives are in the first place. So we don't do a campaign, or you shouldn't be doing anything really until you realise what the business's strategic objectives are. And that's where PR can really fit into that. and help them to grow.
Okay. There's a lot of businesses use external providers. So I go into an organisation and maybe act as a sort of sales director. People have outsourced marketing, outsourced sort of PR, etc. What's the process then, Rich? Let's say I'm a business owner and I'm aware of PR. I'm aware it's probably a gap in our armoury. I've heard reasonable things about what it can do, but I don't really understand it too much. Do you just want to talk me through the steps it would take before I've reached out to you? What happens before we get to the stage where you are engaged, and then what's the steps that, what would a PR plan look like?
Absolutely. Well, that depends. So we would come in and I would always recommend a business owner or a client, has a good chat with someone on the phone, or definitely chemistry meeting beforehand, just to check we're on the same page, because obviously that's essential. And as a PR consultant or consultancy, you would get, sometimes the client would have a brief, so they would have already thought of all those things that you're going to ask them, which is how much investment have you got, what are you trying to achieve, what are your business aims, are there any certain priorities within the business, so whether you're trying to promote a certain part of the business more than others, because that really helps refine the budgets.
And I guess why is that area of the business top of your priority list versus something else at this stage?
Absolutely. And then we would go away as a consultancy and look at, your target audiences and where they're hanging out. So whether that's on social media, which social media channels that might be, what they're reading, what they're listening to, whether it's podcasts or, I don't know, the business news, whether there might be some trade industry magazines or events that are going on. We would really research that target audience market so that we know that when we go back with a plan of campaigns and ideas, that will be really focused on what the business wants to achieve and who they want to reach.
So the real value add at the outset is the research into where do your potential audience live, because none of us know that, do we? I mean, we might think, we're targeting this audience or that audience, but proper research will say, well, this is the magazine that's the default in the industry. This is the portal that people are signing up to. This is the news feed that's right for you, and this is where you need to be aligning your brand with, and that kind of stuff. It's quite detailed. It's quite scientific, that, isn't it?
It is really scientific. Yeah, I think that initial part of the strategic planning with a PR campaign, there's so much value in it. So you can spend a lot of time as an agency doing all that work, and sometimes you don't get picked, and that's kind of gutting. But it's just one of those things within the industry. So sometimes I've heard of consultancies charging for that pitch work because it is a time, it's a time investment for the team. So,
what's your view on that then? You don't charge for your pitch work then, or?
Well, it depends how long it's going to take. So if it's going to take a week out of our time, we will definitely say, have you got a budget for the pitch work itself? Yes. And then it's just about qualifying what the client actually wants and how many people are, asking to come and pitch. So sometimes it can get ridiculous. And then you think, well, actually, how serious are they about stealing our ideas or actually implementing the work that we're going to strategically show for them for the value that we're adding?
That's a fair point, though, isn't it? If they're seeing 3, 4, 5 agencies, they're going to pick up ideas from 3, 4 or 5 agencies, and they may well go to one and say, well, these weren't your ideas, we just liked you a lot. Could you implement these other ideas that we've picked up from other people? I mean, that's a sad state of affairs, but it's not unusual in that or video or other content areas, I guess, isn't it? It's just sometimes about being cleverer about the people you engage with and how you engage with them to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just about, having been the client, not that I've ever done that, but, you do want, it's a bit like the interview process. It is an information gathering process, and you know as the client what's right for your brand and what's right for your objectives. So it's important to have those different agencies coming in and talking to you. But I always go back to, if you're going to get on with those people and you get on with them from the outset, then you're going to work really well together and you can get over anything.
I did like the phrase chemistry meeting, because you will have worked in your time, whether it's by choice or default, with clients that you liked and got on with naturally more than others, and it's just a fact of life. But I think people work better with clients where it's more natural than they do, because it's just instinctive, isn't it?
It is, yeah, absolutely. It's like human nature, isn't it? But I think one of the most important stages at the outset is managing expectations with a client. So I think where things can go wrong with an agency is where the agencies come in and oversold what they can do, made loads of guarantees that they're going to get it, because you can't make any guarantees with media, and unless you own it, and yeah, that's where the frustrations come in for clients. So it's very much about managing not objections, but managing expectations.
Okay. You touched on a few things there in terms of kind of the breadth of PR and what it touches. Does that mean it fits alongside marketing people, or is it instead of? Or, how does it work in an organisation where they've got maybe a sales strategy, a marketing and communications person or team, and then there's an external PR? Is it separate from integrated? How does that work?
Well, ideally it's integrated from the top down as well. So very much senior management buy-in to the PR strategy, and that can, if there is an in-house marketing comms person or a marketing director or manager, we're often brought in to add extra resource for them, or it might be that they're already implementing internal and external marketing and they can't take on the PR as well, and so that kind of sits really well there. Depends on the size of the organisation, really. Sometimes we work alongside internal PR teams as well, and social media as well is often part of that.
It's quite specific now, isn't it? Some people just have a role that's, head of social media, and that job just didn't exist 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, and they're just managing one channel of one element of their communications, aren't they? Really?
Absolutely, yeah. And there's the Facebook thing, there is so much to know that you don't know about Facebook. It's just the most incredible platform. And so that expertise is often sort of outsourced with an agency contact potentially. But yeah, I think the PR people and the communications people and the marketing people that are doing really well are the ones who understand, the breadth of things that are available to them as tools, really.
And they also know that working together is better than working independently and pulling in different directions, I guess. Always.
Yeah. And, the organisations that thrive are the ones that the sales team are working with, the PR team are working with, the comms team are working with, the social media team. And it's all about communication, really, internally as well as externally.
Well, I've got experience of being in the sales end of that, and you go into organisations sometimes, you think left hand and right hand. It'd be nice if one knew what the other was doing, and we're running a campaign for this, or we're not running a campaign for that, or we're going to promote stuff that we haven't got in stock, and all the things, just schoolboy errors sometimes. But so what are the success stories that, I'm obviously not breaching any confidentialities, of where you've worked in an integrated environment? What's been the ones that you're going, oh yeah, that went really well, this is what we achieved? Is there anything you can share with the audience of success around the sort of PR agenda?
Yeah, obviously Red Bull would be an amazing example of working in an integrated way with, having PR from the board level down. Everyone knows the success of that brand. Savills as a real estate firm it's really high up on the agenda, so that means that the external communications are really positive as well. And then
two very different brands there as well, aren't there? So it's not sector specific. It's actually about how it works as an integrated. Can I just take a step back again from Red Bull? You mentioned Red Bull have been going 20 odd years. My experience of Red Bull, I'm a massive football fan. I'm not a big sort of Formula One fan, but heavily involved in sort of sports sponsorship and promotion and that kind of thing. They've come from really nowhere, haven't they, to being, I would say, a world-leading brand, recognised around the globe and things. Was that down to a combination of PR, marketing, social media, the whole aspect of that then?
Yeah, it's down to 1,000, probably 1 million different things going on at the same time, I would say. The founder is an absolute classic entrepreneur. And also just talking about forward thinking and them getting involved with sports. They were talking about content and content strategy and media about 20 years ago when I was still there. So it's incredible how forward thinking the business was then. And then you can obviously see the benefit of that.
Okay. As a PR consultant, you are strategic. You've mentioned that. And I think that's where the value add is, isn't it? You understand business. I think you understand sort of helicopter of what you're trying to achieve, goal setting, all that kind of stuff. Do you have to be an expert in everything from content creation blog writing, copywriting, networking, all that kind of stuff to be an effective PR consultant? Then do you have to have all those strings to your bow?
You have to have all the things, Nick. I mean, it helps. It really does help. So those are some of the core skills probably that you would need as a PR. I think, the understanding of the media is the most important piece of the puzzle. And then really acting as that bridge and that conduit between what the client thinks is news and what you actually think might make news with the media. Because it's our job to ring up the media or to contact the media and try and sell our clients' stories. And what makes it important for a client isn't necessarily going to make it important for the Times or the Telegraph or the BBC.
Sally's the new office manager. Nice for Sally, good day for Sally, good day for the business, but not really going to make the local news on broadcast media, I wouldn't have thought. Yeah,
unless Sally has some crazy, amazing hobby that she also does. There's always ways of extracting stories, I think, from all clients. So people news is always brilliant because people like reading about people more than products and services. So if there is like a new starter or a new appointment or a new contract that's going on, photography always really helps with the press as well. Yeah. And then having people that are media trained and ready to act as spokespeople in front of the camera or on podcasts, that sort of thing, that also works really well. So there's always a story within a client's organisation. And I always say, often we'll go and sit with the clients in their offices just for half a day. And I always say the best place to get the best stories is like in the coffee room, is in the kitchen, because people are telling you a bit of gossip about what's going on or what they're working on. And it's those things that they don't necessarily think of as PR stories are the ones that make the best stories. So, yeah.
Okay. It is interesting though, isn't it? Like you say, that people let the guard down in a relaxed environment. But if you ask them, tell me what's interesting about you, most people go, oh, nothing. And, most people are quite reticent about kind of self-promotion, aren't they? Really? Is it like pulling teeth sometimes, trying to get that human interest angle from them?
I think in like you say, in a board level meeting room, sometimes people don't think that their particular part of the organisation is the most interesting. So it might be that the sales team are better at talking about it. Or
they always would be. They always would be, to be fair, Rachel. Yeah.
But something like I say, sometimes the more junior members of staff might be dealing with more customers, and so they're seeing trends more. So sometimes they're the best people to get good stories from. There's always people that shout louder, but the best client is someone that is really scared of the media initially and then starts to see some success with press coverage and starts to see more sales and leads coming in and then thinks, well, actually, I want more of this, so then they start sending you stories proactively. Yeah. And that's the best client, agency relationship that you can think of.
I guess that takes time to harness, doesn't it? And educate and also trust, really, for people to trust that, well, this media stuff, actually it does work and it's working for me on that basis. So what's the typical length of time, would you think? I know it's probably going to say how long's a piece of string, but what's the length of time before you see people who might be a little bit nervous or reticent starting to be a bit more confident in their proactivity around PR then?
It can be. Obviously it's an education process, so you're kind of trying to minimise the doubt and the risk that they feel like they're going to take. But equally, it can be, anything from getting a nice quote from a more junior member of staff or from a more senior member of staff. It doesn't really matter. And that can take, and then they might get coverage over in 2 days' time. And then they might get sales calls in 3 days' time or in 2 days. And then all of a sudden the light's gone on and they're ready. They're ready to give you more content and more ideas. So
they've sort of made that connection because there's a direct correlation between what they've done and what the action into the business is, like say phone calls, email inquiries, hits on the website, whatever it might be, is the end game.
Absolutely, and it makes a big impact on their particular job role as well. So
you mentioned earlier about sort of being ready and available for media. I've worked with a couple of companies who the CEO, for example, might be seen as a spokesperson for a sector or an industry. So when there's a newsworthy item, so let's take what's current at the moment, coronavirus. There might be somebody who is, a high up ranking member of the NHS, always the go-to person. There used to be a guy who worked at Bradford University School of Management who was an economics expert. So whenever there's an economic story in the north of England, he was the go-to guy for comments and things. Is that part and parcel of your sort of role as a PR, creating that landing point? Is that how
it is? Yeah, and absolutely, that would be the ideal place to be. If you're trying to position yourself as a market leading expert, then you want to be the port of call for journalists who are going to write about that story. So often we'll do things like spokesperson available, notes out to media, just to let people know that we might be looking after someone that's an expert in health or an expert in property, or, you know, and especially when there's a media hot topic like something at the moment, like coronavirus. Ideally, it wouldn't be something like that.
No, but I mean something more. But so a journalist, flipping it round then, a journalist, a member of the media, has got a story to write. Do you just make it easy for them then, do you, by saying, if you're looking for a comment, he's the economics expert for wherever it might be, Bradford University School of Management, he's going to comment on the economic environment in the north of England, get in touch with them. That makes their job easier, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's literally, you know, journalists have so much to do in a day. It's really hard. It's a really hard job. And they're on deadline as well, in addition to that. So if you can let them know that there is a spokesperson who's got media training or who's commented on something before in the same publication or on the same broadcast channel, or they have radio expertise or, you know, radio training as well, then that's going to help them put them and the producers put together an informative program for their listeners and viewers and readers. Quicker
and easier as well, isn't it? So you're just making life easier for the journalists, but you're doing a great job for your clients as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's if they get picked up and
yeah. But I guess, you know, a lot of people have got expertise in fields or worthy of comment, or thought leaders is the new phrase, isn't it, in terms of a particular subject matter. So it's quite an interesting approach to that, really, you know, making them available. You called it press notes or something earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd send something out saying spokesperson available. So the fact that there is a spokesperson from a business or from an organisation and they are available is the key word, really, because sometimes a journalist will be on deadline and they'll get in touch with that person and they might not be available, and that's kind of, you know, the worst thing that you could ever do is get that opportunity, make that opportunity, and then it doesn't follow through because that person's gone into a meeting.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can be down to, right, are you going to be free for the next couple of hours? Because this journalist might call you then.
Yeah.
And just putting that as a priority because of the results that exposure can get you.
Well, deadlines have changed as well. Deadlines are much more instant, particularly with social media and 24/7 broadcast news, aren't they? You know, it used to be, well, we've got a 4-hour window before news at 10 comes on. We've got 4 hours. Now this needs to be on the 6 o'clock news because it's going to be on the 7 o'clock news and the 8 o'clock news, all in the same time on the same channel, isn't it, really? So that made your job harder?
It hasn't made it harder. I mean, it's just the same for everyone, I think. You know, pretty much mostly always available. And especially if there's a story going out to media, then I would just always be checking my phone. I'd just want to know, you know, what was happening, what opportunities were coming in for clients, and just make sure that the clients were available around that time as well.
Okay. Any particular sectors or business types better suited to PR than others? I'm thinking products or services or manufacture and distribution, import-export. Are there some that just have got a better story or a better opportunity to maximise their PR performance?
I think whether you're a product or a service business, there's always room for some exposure for your business. So you've always got people that you would like to influence with your message. And you kind of want to get your message out to your audiences. And so whichever audiences they might be, whether they're a business audience or a consumer audience, there's always some room for PR strategy and you know, getting the message out to them and promoting your business. So I don't think that I would stop it at any particular organisation or industry. I've seen it work across many organisations and industries.
Do you have a niche at wrapped PR then, Rachel? Or you mentioned food and drink. Which other sectors do you experience or work in?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work across mainly property. So there's lots of property clients across Yorkshire and in London as well. And then food and drink and retail are probably our main specialities.
Okay, so you've got the expertise in there. You know the players, you know what the news stories are, you know who the journalists are, and that makes it easier for you to position that expertise with your clients in that field, I guess, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And we're really careful as well. I always say to clients, you know, you've got to be a bit careful of niche agencies because there are some conflicts in there. And, you know, you don't want to be the smallest client on the list and then, you know, the least priority for that business. So it's just having those conversations about who their other clients are and how you fit in with that when you're a business owner.
Okay. Commercial question. How is PR measured in terms of impact or return on investment? Is it anecdotal or is it specific? Can you can you create a measurement KPI for a business from their spend, or is it just about making the phone ring? I don't know what your view would be on that.
It's all about measurement, Nick.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good.
So I always say, and I think a big ad agency exec in the States, I think they said this in a business book somewhere, but, if it can't be measured, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that a PR agency does for a client should be measured. So you set out your KPIs initially within your PR plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's everything from the amount of people that you can reach to the number of impressions something has on social media, to how many listeners something's had, to how many viewers a certain channel has got, to how many listeners a podcast has. And so everything can be measured and everything should be measured. And then the other thing I always say is try to integrate that within your sales team and customer service teams as well. Always ask that question, how did you hear about us? And not everyone remembers, and it might be that, I've seen some marketing and I read about you in the Yorkshire Post. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you're asking those questions, then you start to get a really good picture of where people hear about the business.
You're sort of validating, aren't you, the activity in the channels and that kind of thing. I work with lots of people who are from the marketing background and from the sales end of things, and it frustrates the life out of me when they don't ask, where did you hear about us? It's the easiest question in the world, isn't it? But
So
how
true.
do you validate and measure something if you don't know where the leads are coming from? How do you then position more spend in that area if that area is working for you, I guess?
It's so true. So true. And it's one of those things that I think just gets left out when everyone's trying to get they're in their own world and they're doing their own thing, and it can get really left off the list.
So going back to the measurement, there isn't a direct correlation that you can put in place between the activity, which is what you're measuring, aren't you? Activity, impressions, numbers, volumes, etc., and the direct correlation into sales and money, because you're not responsible for the sales process, are you? The conversion. You can create leads and you can create interest, but an organisation is still responsible for that sales conversion. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it depends on what it is. So I work with an e-commerce business at the moment, for example, and it is very much, everything's totally measurable. So every time we get some really great press coverage for that product, the spike in sales is absolutely tangible on the website. So, it can be that tangible and that immediate.
But that's because of the type of business that is, type thing. If it wouldn't always work in more traditional businesses necessarily.
Not necessarily, no. But I mean, I guess it's one of those things as well as knowing exactly who you've reached and how many people you've reached, and you can look at Google Analytics and see there's a spike in sales. As well as that, it's a case of kind of having that integration with the rest of the teams, because you will just know when the phone's ringing more, or your clients mentioned you and referred you to someone else because they've heard you on a podcast or in the Times or whatever it might be. So
I love that when people go, I was talking to somebody and they sent me an inquiry because they were just thinking about us. No, they weren't. You've made them think about you on a subliminal or direct level, haven't you?
Yeah.
And I guess on some level, PR's got all of that going for it, hasn't it? Reminding people that you are where you are, reminding people of your expertise, and then just saying, why don't we get in touch with them either again or for the first time? So in some respects, it's not that measurable directly, but I get the fact that you can look at spikes in performance, and you've got to put the link back and if they don't get it as business owners, you've got to let them get it and demonstrate that value, I guess, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't work in a silo. It's a snowball effect with all the other marketing messages and all the other new business efforts that a company is making. I think there's a stat now that I think you need about 17 different touch points for a brand to kind of remember that brand and recall that brand and to take an action. So we're just inundated at the moment, and I think that can't be underestimated.
It used to be 7.
It used to be 7,
17.
and it's gone up because we're seeing
there's
so many
channels,
messages.
Aren't there? So many more channels. Wow, that's scary though, isn't it? 7 was hard enough. That was that was inverted commas, as my children would say, back in the day. 7. Now it's 17, and next week it'll be 27, won't it? As more and more channels come to market and fruition. But okay.
It could be. But I think that just illustrates the point that to have a really targeted plan and a targeted audience and a targeted strategy is going to work better.
You don't need a scattergun, you need a rifle, don't you, on that basis? Okay. Last question. I always end up the podcast asking what I would call a golden thread question. If there's a business owner listening into the podcast and they're thinking, PR might be for me, not sure yet. What piece of advice would you give a business owner potentially embarking on a PR approach or campaign? What would be the one thing you'd say to them? This is what you need to be at least aware of.
Oh, so many things, Nick. So yeah, if I was working with, or if someone had recommended us, or a friend had put us in touch as a potential solution to that client's problem, I'd sort of talk to them about managing expectations, but also just about them having a really clear idea and think about what their business objectives are. Because that way, whoever they meet and whoever they consult with, they're going to have much clearer plan and reasons for employing that agency or that PR person. And also, like I said before, it might not be a PR problem. So sometimes within a business, there can be different objectives, but it might be that marketing might solve that objective better. So yeah, just as a business owner, it's about managing expectations. So don't believe a consultant that comes and promises you the earth, because they just can't.
Yeah.
And also looking at your strategic objectives and really tying the PR strategy into that. Excellent.
Rachel, it's flown by. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully you've inspired a few people to think strategically about PR as part of their overall kind of communications mix. Been really enjoyable. Thank you for being a guest on the Impact Sessions. Your contact details will be at the end of the podcast on the on YouTube channel, etc. So, Rachel Clark, thank you very much.
Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.